fellow Earthlings, fellow people in Michigan. So, brandywinebooks.net. Literacy. Oh, and this is going to be kind of in response to Gary B. versus Snyder. So, brandywinebooks.net. Literacy as a tool of tyranny. The title of this post probably suggested to you one of two things. Either I'm going to make fun of some leftist academic who derides Western literature and education as a tool of capitalist oppressors, or I'm going to attack some work of literature that seems to me totalitarian in its ideas. I'm going to do neither. I'm going to talk about the history of literacy because it's a fact. I believe that historically, literacy has been used as a tool of tyranny. Bear with me. It moves on from there. I came to this realization, which others doubtlessly had ahead of me, while reading Torgrim Titelstad's Viking Norway, which I reviewed a few years ago. You've probably read old books or seen old movies where some grizzled old farmer objects to his children getting any of that newfangled book lantern. Such attitudes did in fact exist. Abe Lincoln's father was like that. And it may have had much of its source in simple social prejudice. The father doesn't want his children to become one of them and look down on him. But I suspect that in many cases, it also had traditional roots that went far back in history. In Scandinavian history, and I'm sure something of the same sort must have happened in other Germanic societies, such as England. The old traditional social structures placed law on a very high level of respect. There's a saying from an Icelandic saga that says, "By law, the land shall be built, and by lawlessness it shall be laid to waste." The law back then was an oral tradition. Scandinavian communities would select one of their number as a law speaker. It was his job to have the whole law in his memory and to recite a third of it every year at the assembly or thing. His neighbors would listen respectively, the young men to familiarize themselves with it, the older men to watch for mistakes and make corrections if necessary. In this way, the law was kept both living and accurate. Literacy changed all this. The laws were recorded in books. The law speaker's office became redundant. But this meant that the law was no longer common property. It became the preserve of those who could read, a distinct minority. The common man was now required a lawyer to help him deal with legal problems. He was no longer sure what the fine points of the law were. He was not a participant in the law, but he was a subject. Thus, at that early stage, the literacy of the minority became a tool by which freedom and power were taken away from common folk and concentrated in the hands of lawyers, judges, and the nobility that paid them. No wonder there was a tradition that considered reading and writing dangerous things, tools, the people who cheated our kind. Part of the genius of the American Revolution and of the Scottish Enlightenment, which inspired it, itself inspired by the Reformation, was to change what literacy meant. The new idea was that if you created a literate population, the power of the knowledge of books would be spread to everyone. Laws would be generally known and widely debated, and the tool that propped up tyranny would become every citizen's tool. It hasn't worked out perfectly, but I think it's been a remarkable achievement. So, Mr. Snyder, I know that you were the governor. You're like 60 something, but until you boomers start actually heeding what some of us millennials may have to say, there's going to be a lack of, how do I say this? A lack of respect given to you, the boomer class, that yet has to put these devices back on our dwellings. No uncertain terms, I just read that so that other people can start to realize that this caste system set up in the state, in the United States, will certainly be done away with.